The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above the nearly empty Harvard Mathematics Library at 11:42 p.m. Professor Diana Weissman rubbed her tired eyes, surrounded by stacks of papers and half-empty coffee cups. 3 months of working on the Karishma Paradox had yielded nothing but frustration and dead ends. The problem, which had confounded mathematicians for nearly 40 years, seemed determined to remain unsolved. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Diana looked up, expecting the security guard on his usual rounds. Instead, she found herself staring at a young girl, no more than 12 years old, standing awkwardly in the doorway. She wore a faded blue sweatshirt 2 sizes too large, sneakers with mismatched laces, and clutched a worn composition notebook to her chest. "Excuse me," the girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you Professor Weissman?" Diana glanced at her watch. "Yes, but what are you doing here at this hour? Are you lost? Where are your parents?" "My mum's waiting in the parking lot. I'm not supposed to be here, but..." The girl hesitated, then thrust her notebook forward. "I think I found something about your paradox. I know I'm just a kid, but could you please just look?" Before Diana could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Professor Malcolm Bennett, the department chair, appeared. Behind the girl, tall and imposing with steel-rimmed glasses and a perpetually furrowed brow, Bennett had a reputation for intellectual brilliance matched only by his rigid traditionalism. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Young lady, this is a restricted area. How did you get past security?" The girl flinched but stood her ground. "I told them I needed to see Professor Weissman about the Karishma Paradox. It's important." Bennett's eyebrows rose as he looked from the girl to Diana. And what exactly would a child know about high-level theoretical mathematics? "I don't know everything," the girl admitted. "But I can see the patterns when I draw them a certain way. I've been working on this for months." Diana felt a flicker of curiosity despite herself. "What's your name?" "Lily. Lily Nakamura." Bennett sighed dramatically. "Professor Weissman, surely you're not entertaining this interruption. We have serious work to do, and this is hardly..." "Just a moment, Malcolm." Diana extended her hand toward Lily. "May I see your notebook?" Lily hesitantly handed it over. Diana opened it to find page after page filled with intricate, colorful diagrams. They weren't traditional mathematical notation. Instead, they resembled elaborate mandalas with spiraling patterns and interconnected shapes that seemed to flow across the paper. Between these visual structures were scattered equations and notes in a cramped, careful handwriting. Bennett peered over Diana's shoulder, his expression shifting from annoyance to disdain. "This isn't mathematics. It's doodling, colorful doodling, but hardly relevant to the Karishma Paradox." Diana wasn't so sure. Something about the central pattern on page 17 caught her attention. A recursive structure that seemed to capture an aspect of the paradox she'd been struggling with for weeks. "How did you come up with this approach, Lily?" The girl shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Numbers and equations don't make sense to me unless I can see them. When teachers show problems on the board, they just look like squiggles until I draw them my way. Then the solutions appear, like they were always there, just hidden." Bennett scoffed. "Professor Weissman, this is absurd. The Karishma Paradox has resisted the efforts of the finest mathematical minds for decades. It requires advanced knowledge of nonlinear dynamics and topological invariance. This," he gestured dismissively at the notebook, "this is meaningless scribbling." Diana closed the notebook and handed it back to Lily, noticing the hurt and disappointment flooding the girl's eyes. "Thank you for sharing your work, Lily. It's certainly creative." "But you don't believe me either," Lily said quietly. Diana hesitated. Bennett was right about one thing. The Karishma Paradox was extraordinarily complex. The idea that a child with no formal training could contribute meaningfully was difficult to accept. And yet that spiral pattern. It's not a question of belief, Diana said carefully. Advanced mathematics builds on years of foundational knowledge. It's like trying to write poetry in a language you've never studied. Bennett nodded approvingly. Exactly. Now I think it's time for you to rejoin your mother, young lady. The university has strict policies about unaccompanied minors on campus. Lily took her notebook back, clutching it tightly. My mom works 2 jobs. She spent her only evening off this week driving me here because I told her it was important. Her voice trembled but remained steady. I know I'm just a kid, but sometimes the answer is simple enough for a kid to see. As Bennett escorted the girl out, Diana returned to her papers, trying to refocus on the problem. But images from Lily's notebook kept intruding, particularly that spiral pattern with its peculiar symmetry. Something about it nagged at her consciousness, like a half-remembered melody. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. 20 minutes later, Bennett returned, looking satisfied. Security has escorted her to the parking lot. Really, Diana, we must maintain standards. The department has a reputation to uphold. Diana nodded absently, still thinking about the notebook. Did you actually look at her diagrams, Malcolm? There was something interesting about her approach. Please, Bennett interrupted, don't tell me you're taking this seriously. That notebook contained nothing but artistic doodling with a few random equations thrown in. It's the mathematical equivalent of a child playing doctor. Perhaps, Diana conceded, but the history of mathematics is full of unexpected insights from unusual sources. Bennett's expression hardened. The history of mathematics is built on rigorous proof and logical progression, not colorful drawings from untrained children. Your tenure review is coming up, Diana. The committee will be examining your judgment as well as your research output. I suggest you focus on established methodologies rather than entertaining distractions. The implied threat wasn't subtle. Diana had worked 8 years toward tenure at Harvard, sacrificing personal relationships and countless hours to establish herself in a field still dominated by men. Bennett, as department chair, held significant influence over the tenure committee. Of course, Malcolm, you're right. After he left, Diana tried again to concentrate on her work, but the image of Lily's disappointed face kept returning to her. On impulse, she grabbed her coat and hurried toward the parking lot. Perhaps the girl and her mother were still there. The December night was bitter cold, Cambridge's bitter wind cutting through her inadequate jacket. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered across the vast expanse of asphalt. Diana was about to turn back when she spotted them, a woman and girl sitting in an old Toyota with visible rust around the wheel wells, the engine running to provide heat. Diana approached and tapped on the passenger window. Lily looked up in surprise, then rolled down the window. Professor Weissman, I wondered if I could take another look at your notebook. Diana glanced at the woman in the driver's seat. If that's all right with your mother. Lily's mother looked exhausted, but managed a smile. Of course. I'm Grace Nakamura. Lily has been talking about your work for months. Diana raised an eyebrow. My work specifically? Lily nodded enthusiastically. I read your paper on topological approaches to paradoxical functions. The library didn't have it, but Mr. Abernathy at the bookstore helped me find it online. Diana was momentarily speechless. Her paper had been published in an obscure mathematical journal, with a circulation of perhaps 300 specialists worldwide. The idea that a 12-year-old had not only found it but apparently read and understood it enough to reference it was astonishing. "May I?" Diana gestured to the notebook Lily still clutched. The girl handed it over, and Diana opened it again, this time taking more care to examine the diagrams. Standing in the cold parking lot, illuminated only by the harsh security lights and the car's dashboard, Diana began to see what she had missed before. The spiraling patterns weren't random artistic expressions, they were visual representations of functional relationships, recursively mapped in a way that revealed their underlying structure. Page by page, Diana realized she was looking at a fundamentally different way of conceptualizing the Karishma Paradox. Lily hadn't approached it as a set of equations to solve, but as a geometric structure to navigate, a landscape with hills, valleys and hidden passages. "Lily, this is remarkable. How long have you been working on this?" "Since October, when I first read about the paradox in a magazine. It said no one could solve it, but when I started drawing it my way, I could see where everyone was getting stuck." Lily pointed to a dense, dark spiral at the center of one diagram. "They keep trying to go straight through this part, but you can't. You have to go around it, through these tunnels." Diana looked more closely at what Lily called tunnels, connections in the visual structure that represented transformations of the function that no one had considered. They weren't shortcuts exactly, but alternative pathways that bypassed the central obstruction. Grace Nakamura watched them with a mixture of pride and confusion. Lily has always seen math differently. Her teachers don't know what to do with her. Some think she's not paying attention because she's always drawing during math class. "But I am paying attention," Lily protested. "I just can't understand it unless I draw it first." Diana closed the notebook, her mind racing. "Mrs. Nakamura, with your permission, I'd like to work with Lily on this. Not just today, but over the coming weeks. I believe her approach might offer genuine insight into the Karishma Paradox." Grace looked surprised. "You mean tutoring? We can't afford—" "No, not tutoring," Diana clarified. "A collaboration. Lily has developed a unique perspective that might help advance our understanding of this problem. It would be a formal research partnership." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? You believe me now?" "I'm beginning to," Diana smiled. "But we have a lot of work to do to translate your visual intuition into formal mathematical language." Grace looked skeptical. "Won't you get in trouble?" That other professor seemed pretty dismissive. Diana thought of Bennett and his thinly veiled warning about her tenure review. This unorthodox collaboration could indeed raise eyebrows, particularly if it yielded nothing substantive. But looking at Lily's hopeful face, she made her decision. Some questions are worth the risk. The Karishma Paradox has implications beyond pure mathematics. It could potentially impact everything from quantum computing to climate modeling. If Lily has seen something the rest of us have missed, that matters more than academic politics. They exchanged contact information, and Diana promised to call the next day to arrange a proper meeting. As she walked back to the mathematics building, clutching her own hastily scribbled notes about Lily's approach, Diana felt a surge of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. Whether or not the girl's insights led to a breakthrough, there was something profound in her visual methodology, a reminder that mathematics wasn't just about manipulating symbols according to established rules, but about perceiving patterns and relationships in their purest form. Her phone rang as she reached the building entrance. It was Dr. Elena Martinez, a former colleague now working at Princeton. "Diana, I just sent you an email about the Weinstadt conference. Tell me you're submitting a paper." Diana hesitated. The Weinstadt Conference on Nonlinear Systems was the premier event in her field, happening just 4 months from now. Having a paper accepted would significantly strengthen her tenure case. I'm not sure, Elena. I've been working on the Karishma Paradox, but progress has been slow. The Karishma? Ambitious. Any breakthroughs? Diana thought of Lily's notebook with its spiraling pathways and hidden tunnels. Possibly. I've just encountered a new perspective that might lead somewhere interesting. Well, the deadline for abstracts is in 3 weeks. Even a preliminary result would make waves. After ending the call, Diana returned to her office. The clock showed 1:17 a.m., but instead of feeling exhausted, she felt energized. She cleared a space on her whiteboard and began sketching one of Lily's diagrams from memory, trying to identify the underlying mathematical principles it represented. By dawn, she had filled 3 whiteboards and 2 notebooks with attempts to formalize Lily's visual approach. The girl's intuition pointed toward a fundamental reframing of the paradox, not as a problem of resolving contradictory conditions, but as a navigation through a topological space where those conditions represented boundaries or constraints. Diana finally left the office as the first students began arriving for early classes. She had been awake for nearly 24 hours, but her mind was still racing with possibilities. As she crossed Harvard Yard, she nearly collided with Bennett, who was walking briskly toward the mathematics building. "Diana, you look disheveled. Long night?" She nodded, suddenly aware of her rumpled clothing and uncombed hair. "Working on the Karishma Paradox. I think I may have found a new angle." Bennett smiled condescendingly. "Not inspired by that girl's drawings, I hope." Diana hesitated only briefly. Actually, yes. Her visual approach suggested a topological reframing that I've been exploring all night. It's preliminary, but promising. Bennett's smile vanished. "You can't be serious." "Diana, I spoke with you about this. The department expects rigorous conventional research from its tenure candidates. Not whatever this is. Mathematics isn't about convention, Malcolm. It's about truth and insight, wherever they come from. Poetry and philosophy can come from anywhere," Bennett replied coldly. "Mathematics requires training, discipline, and adherence to established methodologies. This path you're considering, collaborating with an untrained child, it will not reflect well on your judgment when the tenure committee meets." Diana straightened her shoulders. "Then I'll have to make sure we produce results compelling enough to overcome those concerns." But as Bennett walked away, Diana felt a mixture of defiance and doubt. Had she just jeopardized her career on a momentary inspiration? The practical part of her brain urged caution. Go home, sleep, reconsider this rash decision in the light of day. But another part, the part that had drawn her to mathematics in the first place, whispered that Lily's approach contained something genuine and valuable. That intuitive visualization might reveal aspects of the paradox that conventional analysis had missed. She arrived home to find an email from Grace Nakamura, sent at 3:42 a.m. "Professor Weissman, Lily couldn't sleep after meeting you. She kept working on her drawings and wanted me to send you this latest version. She says it shows why the tunnels work the way they do. She's finally asleep now, but wanted you to have this right away. I've never seen her so excited about someone, taking her seriously. Thank you for your kindness to my daughter." Grace Nakamura attached was a photo of a new diagram, more elaborate than those Diana had seen in the notebook. This one showed the central structure of the paradox from multiple perspectives simultaneously, as if Lily had attempted to represent a 4-dimensional object on 2-dimensional paper. Annotations in Lily's neat handwriting explained how the tunnels connected different regions of the mathematical landscape. Diana saved the image, then collapsed into bed. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was a quote from Henri Poincaré, one of the greatest mathematicians of the modern era. Mathematics is the art of giving the same name to different things. Perhaps Lily Nakamura was simply seeing the same mathematical reality through a different lens, one unclouded by years of conventional training and established assumptions. 3 days later, Diana sat in her office with Lily, surrounded by whiteboards covered with a mixture of conventional notation and adaptations of the girl's visual approach. They had been working together for hours, Diana trying to build a bridge between Lily's intuitive visualization and formal mathematical language. "So this tunnel here," Diana said, pointing to a curved path on Lily's latest drawing, "represents a transformation that preserves the topological invariance while bypassing the singularity at the center." Lily nodded. "Exactly. It's like, imagine you're trying to climb a mountain, but there's a cliff face you can't get past. Everyone keeps trying to scale the cliff directly, but if you look at the mountain from above, you'd see there's a cave system that goes through the mountain instead. You come out on the other side at the same height, but you've avoided the impossible climb. And in mathematical terms, that means we can transform the function through this alternative domain without violating the boundary conditions." Diana scribbled a series of equations, something like this. Lily studied the equations, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Almost, but not quite. The tunnel doesn't go straight through. It spirals up, then down, then up again before emerging." Diana adjusted the equations. "Better?" "Yes, that's it. See how the path has to twist 3 times? That's the key part everyone misses." Their collaboration had found a rhythm. Lily would explain her visual understanding, using metaphors and drawings to convey what she saw in her mind. Diana would translate these insights into formal mathematical language, checking each step with Lily to ensure it captured her intuition accurately. The process was challenging for both of them. Lily struggled to articulate concepts she understood visually, but had no formal vocabulary for. Diana had to repeatedly set aside years of conventional training to appreciate the girl's novel perspective. A knock at the door interrupted them. Diana looked up to see her colleague, Professor Jamil Acharya, standing in the doorway. Unlike Bennett, Jamil was known for his open-mindedness and interdisciplinary approach to mathematics. "Diana, I was hoping to discuss..." He stopped, noticing Lily. "Oh, I didn't realize you had a visitor." "Jamil, this is Lily Nakamura. We're collaborating on a new approach to the Karishma Paradox." "Lily, this is Professor Acharya." Jamil's eyebrows rose, but he smiled warmly at Lily. "A young collaborator. How wonderful. What grade are you in, Lily?" "7th, she replied shyly. "Impressive. I didn't tackle the Karishma Paradox until graduate school, and it thoroughly defeated me." He turned to Diana. "Bennett mentioned you were pursuing an unconventional research direction." "I see what he meant." Diana tensed. "Does the entire department know?" "Not yet, but Bennett has expressed his concerns to several senior faculty members." Jamil glanced meaningfully at Lily, indicating he didn't want to discuss this in front of her. Diana nodded. "Lily, would you mind getting us some water from the fountain down the hall? We'll take a short break." After the girl left, Diana sighed. "I suppose Bennett is lobbying against my tenure?" "Not explicitly, but he's raising questions about your judgment and methodology." Jamil leaned against the desk. "Diana, you know, I respect intellectual courage, but a formal collaboration with a 7th grader on one of the most notorious unsolved problems in our field. Even I have to ask if you've considered the implications." "I've considered them," Diana said firmly. "And if you could see what I've seen in the past 3 days, you'd understand. Lily has developed a visual, intuitive approach that reveals aspects of the paradox we've been missing. It's not just childish drawings. It's a fundamentally different way of conceptualizing the mathematical relationships involved." Jamil looked skeptical but intrigued. "Show me." Diana walked him through the whiteboards, explaining how Lily's visual framework had led them to identify what might be an alternative pathway through the paradox. A transformation that maintained the critical invariance while circumventing the central contradiction. "We're still working on formalizing it rigorously," Diana concluded, "but the core insight is profound. Lily sees the mathematical structure as a landscape to be navigated rather than a system of equations to be solved." Jamil was silent for a long moment, studying the diagrams and equations. "This is unorthodox, certainly, but I see the direction you're taking. That transformation sequence especially, it's elegant." That was Lily's insight entirely. She saw the tunnel in her visual landscape, and we worked backward to express it formally. Lily returned with water bottles, looking nervously between the two professors. Jamil smiled at her. "Lily, Diana has been explaining your approach. Would you mind showing me how you visualize the central constraint of the paradox?" Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, Lily took a marker and began drawing on a clean section of whiteboard. As she worked, explaining her visual, understanding in her own terminology of mountains, tunnels, and rivers, Jamil watched with increasing fascination. "Remarkable," he murmured when she finished. "It's like she's developed her own mathematical language." "Not a language," Lily corrected seriously, "more like a map. The math is already there. I'm just drawing what it looks like." Jamil laughed with genuine delight. "Well put. Mathematics exists independent of our notation. We're just creating maps to navigate it." He turned to Diana. "I withdraw my skepticism. This is genuinely interesting work. Unorthodox, yes, but potentially valuable." After he left, Diana noticed Lily looked troubled. "What's wrong?" "That other professor, the tall one who sent me away the first night. He's trying to stop our work, isn't he?" Diana hesitated, then nodded. "Professor Bennett has concerns about our approach. He believes mathematics should follow established paths. Because I'm a kid, or because my way of doing math is wrong?" "Neither," Diana said firmly. "Academic institutions can be slow to accept new approaches, especially from unexpected sources. Throughout history, some of the most important mathematical breakthroughs faced resistance initially." Lily considered this. "Will you get in trouble because of me?" The question hit Diana hard. She'd been so caught up in the excitement of their work that she'd pushed aside the very real professional risks she was taking. Bennett's opposition could seriously damage her tenure prospects. 4 years of her contract remained, but the tenure review process would begin in earnest next year. If she positioned herself in opposition to the department chair on a matter of methodological principle, the outcome could be disastrous for her career. But looking at Lily, this remarkable child who saw mathematics with such clarity and originality, Diana couldn't bring herself to retreat to safer ground. "Let me worry about that," she said. "What matters is the work itself. If we can develop these insights into a formal breakthrough on the Karishma Paradox, the results will speak for themselves." Lily didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded. "My mom says sometimes you have to fight for what's true, even when it's hard." "Your mom sounds very wise." They returned to their work, refined their approach, and by the end of the session had developed a clearer mathematical formulation of Lily's tunnel concept. As Diana walked Lily to meet her mother in the parking lot, she felt simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. This collaboration was unlike anything she'd experienced before, challenging her assumptions, pushing her to translate between radically different ways of understanding mathematics. That evening, Diana received an email from the Weinstadt Conference Committee reminding her that the abstract submission deadline was approaching. She stared at her computer screen, considering her options. Submitting preliminary results from her work with Lily would be risky. If they couldn't deliver a substantive breakthrough by the conference date, it could be professionally embarrassing. But the alternative, retreating to safer, more conventional research, felt like a betrayal of the genuine progress they were making. Diana began drafting an abstract titled Topological Navigation of the Karishma Paradox, a visual intuitive approach. She listed both herself and Lily Nakamura as authors, then hesitated. Would including a 12-year-old as co-author immediately prejudice reviewers against the submission? After lengthy consideration, she decided honesty was essential. If the work had merit, it deserved to be recognized regardless of its unconventional origins. She completed the abstract, outlining their approach and the preliminary results they had achieved, and submitted it just before midnight. The next morning, Diana received a message from the department secretary. Professor Bennett had requested a meeting at his earliest convenience. The timing was unlikely to be coincidental. Diana found Bennett in his office, surrounded by the trappings of academic success, awards, publications, photographs with renowned mathematicians. He looked up from his computer as she entered, his expression grave. "Diana, close the door, please." She did so, then took a seat across from him. "I've just received a most unusual notification," Bennett began. "The Weinstadt conference system automatically alerts me to submissions from our department. Imagine my surprise when I saw you had submitted an abstract co-authored with Lily Nakamura, a 7th grade student." Diana met his gaze steadily. The work represents a genuine collaboration. Lily's visual approach provided the key insights. "This is precisely what I warned you about." Bennett removed his glasses, polishing them with a cloth. "The Weinstadt conference is the premier event in our field. By submitting this unusual work with a child as co-author, you risk not only embarrassment, but damage to the department's reputation. If the work stands on its merit, that's just it," Bennett interrupted. "How can it? Mathematics is a discipline built on centuries of rigorous development. It requires years of training to contribute meaningfully. The idea that an untrained child could offer genuine insight into one of the field's most challenging problems is frankly absurd." Diana leaned forward. "History suggests otherwise. Évariste Galois developed revolutionary mathematical concepts. As a teenager, John von Neumann was publishing original work before he was 20. Ramanujan had minimal formal training, yet made profound contributions. Exceptional cases, all of them, and none were 12 years old." Bennett replaced his glasses. "Diana, I respect your intellect and your previous work. That's why I'm giving you this opportunity to reconsider. Withdraw the abstract. Return to conventional methodologies. Your tenure prospects will be much stronger if you demonstrate sound judgment and rigorous adherence to established practices." The threat was clear: continue this path, and Bennett would oppose her tenure. Given his influence, that would likely be fatal to her career at Harvard. "What if we're right?" Diana asked quietly. "What if Lily's approach does lead to a breakthrough on the Karishma Paradox?" "Then publish it after securing tenure," Bennett replied pragmatically. "Take the credit yourself if you must. But introducing a child co-author at the Weinstadt conference undermines the seriousness of our discipline." Diana stood. "I'll consider your advice, Professor Bennett." As she walked back to her office, Diana felt the weight of her decision. Bennett was offering a clear path to professional security. Abandon the unconventional collaboration, or at least hide it until after achieving tenure. It was the rational choice from a career perspective, but it would mean betraying Lily's trust and denying the girl recognition for her genuine contributions. It would mean choosing institutional politics over mathematical truth. And somehow, Diana couldn't bring herself to make that choice. Instead, she called Grace Nakamura. "Mrs. Nakamura," I was wondering if Lily might be available for an extra session tomorrow. We've made good progress, but there's still much work to do if we're going to present at the Weinstadt conference in April. The late January sun cast long shadows across Harvard Yard as Diana hurried toward the mathematics building. 4 weeks had passed since their first meeting, and their work had intensified. After school, 3 days a week, Lily would arrive with her latest visualizations, and together they would work to translate them into formal mathematical language. Progress had been steady but challenging. The core insight, Lily's tunnels, through the mathematical landscape of the Karishma Paradox, had proven increasingly fruitful as they refined their understanding of the topological transformations they represented. But formalizing these insights into rigorous proof required painstaking work, translating between Lily's intuitive vision and Diana's mathematical expertise. Today was particularly important. The Weinstadt Conference Committee had requested more details about their abstract, a positive sign that it had passed the initial screening. But they needed to provide a more comprehensive explanation of their methodology. Within the week, Diana had just reached the building entrance when her phone rang. It was Grace Nakamura. "Professor Weissman, I'm so sorry, but Lily won't be able to come today. She's been sent home from school with a fever of 101. Diana's heart sank. "I'm sorry to hear that. Please tell her to rest and not worry about our work." "There's something else," Grace continued, her voice tense. "Lily's math teacher, Mrs. Coleman, requested a parent-teacher conference. She's concerned that Lily is neglecting proper mathematical methods in favor of her drawing approach. She doesn't know about your collaboration. Lily hasn't told anyone at school, except Mr. Abernathy, the librarian, who helps her find research papers." Diana frowned. "That's troubling. Would it help if I spoke with Mrs. Coleman? I could explain that Lily's visual approach has genuine mathematical value. Would you? The conference is scheduled for next Monday afternoon. Of course, just send me the details." After ending the call, Diana entered the building, preoccupied with this new complication. It hadn't occurred to her that their work might create difficulties for Lily at school. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with Jamil Acharya in the hallway. "Diana, just the person I was looking for." Jamil's expression was unusually serious. "Do you have a moment to talk? Privately?" They went to his office, where Jamil closed the door before speaking. "The tenure committee had its preliminary meeting yesterday. I'm not supposed to share this, but as your friend and colleague, I felt you should know. Bennett raised significant concerns about your current research direction." Diana had expected this, but it still stung. "What specifically?" "He characterized your work with Lily as academically irresponsible and suggested it demonstrates poor judgment. Several committee members seemed receptive to his arguments. And you're on the committee as well." Jamil sighed. "I defended your right to pursue unorthodox approaches, but I'm just one voice. Diana, this collaboration is becoming a genuine liability for your tenure prospects." Diana rubbed her temples, feeling the beginnings of a headache. "What would you do in my position, Jamil? The work with Lily is yielding real insights. I've never been closer to understanding the Karishma Paradox." "I don't know," he admitted. "But I thought you should understand the stakes clearly. Bennett is building a case against you. Unless your work produces dramatic results that cannot be ignored, the committee is likely to view this collaboration unfavorably." After Jamil left, Diana sat at her desk, staring at the latest version of their paper. The methodology section remained incomplete. They needed to better formalize the connection between Lily's visual framework and the underlying mathematical principles it represented. She began working on this herself, but found she kept hitting the same obstacles. Without Lily's intuitive understanding of the visual landscape, Diana struggled to make progress. Their collaboration had become genuinely synergistic. Neither could advance the work significantly without the other. That evening, Diana visited the Nakamura home for the first time. Their apartment was small, but meticulously kept, with bookshelves occupying every available wall space. Lily was resting on the couch, looking pale but alert, surrounded by notebooks and graph paper. "Professor Weissman, I'm sorry about today. Mom said I can't come back until my fever's been gone for 24 hours. Your health comes first," Diana assured her, setting down a small gift bag. "I brought you something." Inside was a copy of Geometric Visualization in Mathematics by Dr. Maria Reyes, one of the few modern mathematicians who had written seriously about visual approaches to abstract concepts. Lily's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "There are other people who see math like this. Not exactly like you do, but yes, there's a history of visual and intuitive approaches to mathematics. It's less prominent now, but it has produced important insights throughout history." They spent an hour working on the methodology section of their paper, with Lily explaining her latest visualizations and Diana taking careful notes. Despite her illness, the girl's mind was as sharp as ever, making connections Diana would never have seen on her own. As Diana prepared to leave, Grace Nakamura walked her to the door. "Professor Weissman, may I ask you something?" Grace's voice was low, ensuring Lily couldn't overhear from the living room. "This work you're doing with Lily, I know it's important to her, but is it causing problems for you professionally?" Diana hesitated. "There's some resistance. That's not uncommon with unorthodox approaches. Lily told me about the professor who dismissed her work that first night. She worries you're risking your position by working with her." Grace's expression was troubled. "I don't want my daughter's opportunity to come at the expense of your career." "I appreciate your concern," Diana said carefully, "but academic progress often requires challenging established thinking. If our approach proves valid, any temporary professional discomfort will have been worthwhile." The mathematics department auditorium was filled to capacity for the monthly colloquium, with graduate students and faculty crowded into every available seat. Diana sat in the back row, notebook open on her lap, watching as Professor Bennett took the podium. Today's presentation was on recent advances in topological approaches to nonlinear systems, directly relevant to her work with Lily. "Mathematics progresses through disciplined application of established principles," Bennett began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "While intuition plays a role in formulating hypotheses, it is rigorous proof and logical consistency that transforms conjecture into knowledge." Diana couldn't help feeling the opening statement was directed at her. Word of her collaboration with Lily had spread throughout the department, generating reactions ranging from bemusement to open skepticism. Only a handful of colleagues, led by Jamil, had expressed genuine interest in their approach. As Bennett continued his presentation, Diana found herself scribbling notes, not about his lecture, but about connections to Lily's visual framework. Where Bennett described topological invariance in abstract algebraic terms, she sketched one of Lily's diagrams, showing how those invariants manifested as structural features in the mathematical landscape. After the lecture, Diana lingered in the hallway, reviewing her notes. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Dr. Sophia Chen, a visiting professor from MIT, approaching until she spoke. "Those are interesting diagrams, not standard notation." Diana looked up, slightly embarrassed to be caught with such unorthodox sketches. "They're part of an alternative visualization approach I've been exploring with a young collaborator. They remind me of something." Dr. Chen leaned closer, studying the drawings. "Have you ever encountered the work of Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka?" Diana shook her head. "I don't believe so." He's a mathematician at Kyoto University who developed a geometric visualization system for complex topological structures. His work isn't widely known in Western academic circles, but there are similarities to what you've sketched here. Diana felt a surge of excitement. Do you have any references I could look up? Dr. Chen smiled. Better than that. Dr. Tanaka is giving a guest lecture at MIT next week. You should come and bring your young collaborator if possible. After exchanging contact information, Diana hurried to her office to research Dr. Tanaka. She found only a handful of papers in English, but even the abstracts were tantalizing. Tanaka had indeed developed a visual approach to certain classes of topological problems using what he called structural mapping to represent mathematical relationships, geometrically rather than algebraically. She immediately called Grace Nakamura. How is Lily feeling? Much better. Her fever broke yesterday and she's back at school today. That's wonderful news. I've just learned about a mathematician whose work may be relevant to Lily's approach. He's giving a lecture at MIT next Wednesday afternoon. Would it be possible for Lily to attend? I know it's during school hours. Grace hesitated. I'd need to request a special absence. Her school has been questioning her frequent absences for your sessions already. This could be important. Dr. Tanaka has developed a visual approach to mathematics that shares some characteristics with Lily's method. Meeting him might help us formalize our work for the Weinstadt conference. I'll see what I can do, Grace promised. But there's another issue we need to discuss. The parent-teacher conference with Mrs. Coleman is tomorrow, and she's requested that Lily be present as well. Diana had almost forgotten about the conference. I'll be there. What time? 4 o'clock. And I should warn you, Mrs. Coleman is very traditional in her approach to mathematics education. She believes strongly in methodical problem-solving using standard techniques. All the more reason for me to explain the value of Lily's approach. The next day, Diana arrived at Westlake Middle School 15 minutes early. The building was typical of public schools in the area, functional but showing signs of limited funding and deferred maintenance. She found the front office and was directed to room 217, Mrs. Coleman's classroom. Grace was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair clearly designed for someone much smaller. Beside her, Lily looked uncharacteristically subdued, her usual energy dampened by the formal setting. Mrs. Coleman was a woman in her mid-50s with steel-grey hair pulled back in a severe bun and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked up as Diana entered. "You must be Professor Weissman. I'm Catherine Coleman." Her tone was professional but cool. "I appreciate you joining us, though I must admit I'm not entirely clear on your role here." Diana extended her hand. "I've been working with Lily on an advanced mathematics project, a collaboration exploring her unique approach to visualizing complex problems." Mrs. Coleman's expression remained neutral as she shook Diana's hand, but her grip tightened noticeably. "Yes, that's partly why I requested this meeting. Please have a seat." Once they were all seated, Mrs. Coleman opened a folder containing what appeared to be Lily's recent assignments and test papers. "Mrs. Nakamura, I asked to meet with you because I'm concerned about Lily's recent performance in mathematics." She removed a test paper from the folder and placed it on the desk where they could all see it. This was last week's assessment on algebraic expressions. You'll note that Lily received a D. Diana leaned forward to examine the test. The problems were standard pre-algebra exercises. Lily had clearly understood the concepts. Her final answers were mostly correct, but instead of showing the expected step-by-step algebraic work, she had drawn small diagrams in the margins, using her visual approach to reach the solutions. Mrs. Coleman tapped the paper with a manicured fingernail. "As you can see, Lily is not following proper mathematical procedures. I've repeatedly instructed her to show her work using algebraic notation. but she persists in using these drawings. She glanced at Diana. I understand you've been encouraging this alternative approach, Professor Weissman. Diana chose her words carefully. I've been working with Lily to develop her natural mathematical intuition, which happens to be primarily visual and geometric rather than symbolic or algebraic. Her approach is unconventional, but mathematically valid. Perhaps at the research level, Mrs. Coleman conceded, but Lily needs to master fundamental algebraic techniques before experimenting with alternative methods. These are building blocks upon which all higher mathematics depends. With respect, Mrs. Coleman, Diana replied, mathematics is not a linear progression where one must master technique A before proceeding to concept B. Different minds understand mathematical relationships in different ways. Lily grasps the underlying principles intuitively through visualization. Mrs. Coleman's lips thinned. Professor Weissman, I've been teaching mathematics for 27 years. I've seen many students who think they can bypass standard methods, and it invariably leads to gaps in their understanding. Lily is unusually bright, but she needs structure and discipline in her approach. Grace Nakamura, who had been silent until now, spoke up. What exactly are you proposing, Mrs. Coleman? I recommend that Lily attend our after-school mathematics support program 3 days a week to focus specifically on proper algebraic technique. And while I cannot dictate what she does outside of school, I would strongly suggest suspending this alternative project temporarily. Diana felt Lily tense beside her. The girl had remained silent throughout the exchange, but now she looked up, eyes flashing. My diagrams aren't just drawings, Lily said, her voice quiet but intense. They're how I see the relationships between numbers and variables. When I try to write out the steps the way you want, it's like trying to describe a painting one brushstroke at a time. Mrs. Coleman's expression softened slightly. Lily, I understand this approach feels natural to you, but part of education is learning to communicate in standardized ways that others can understand. In mathematics, that means using established notation and showing your work systematically. But what if there's a better way? Lily persisted. What if my way shows things that standard notation misses? For middle school algebra, dear, there isn't. These methods have been refined over centuries, specifically because they work reliably. Diana decided to change tactics. Mrs. Coleman, what if we could demonstrate that Lily's visual approach has genuine mathematical value? Would you consider allowing her to use it alongside more traditional methods? The teacher looked skeptical. How would you propose to demonstrate that? Diana hesitated, then decided to take a calculated risk. We've submitted an abstract to the Weinstadt Conference on nonlinear systems based on Lily's visualization approach to the Karishma Paradox, an unsolved problem in advanced topology, and dynamic systems theory. Mrs. Coleman's eyebrows rose. The Karishma Paradox? That's well beyond undergraduate level. Yes, and Lily's visual framework has provided insights that conventional approaches have missed for decades. We're in the process of formalizing these insights for presentation at the conference. For the first time, a flicker of genuine interest crossed Mrs. Coleman's face. That's remarkable, if true. I assure you it is. I wouldn't risk my professional reputation on anything less. The teacher studied Lily with new attention. And you believe this visualization technique could be adapted to middle school algebra? Diana nodded. With some work, yes. In fact, that might make an excellent project, developing ways to translate between Lily's visual approach and standard algebraic notation. Mrs. Coleman tapped her pen thoughtfully. I'm skeptical, but I'm also a believer in empirical evidence. What if we try this? Lily will continue to attend regular classes and complete assignments showing standard algebraic work. But once a week, she can give a short presentation to the class, demonstrating how her visual method applies to what we're learning. Lily straightened in her chair. Really? You'd let me do that? On a trial basis, Mrs. Coleman qualified. And I would expect to see improvement in your standard technique as well. Mathematics isn't just about finding answers. It's about communicating your reasoning clearly to others. As they left the meeting, Diana felt cautiously optimistic. Mrs. Coleman had been more receptive than expected once she understood the potential significance of Lily's approach. The weekly presentations would be challenging, but might help Lily develop the translation skills they needed for their Weinstadt paper. Do you think I can really explain my way of seeing math to my class? Lily asked as they walked to the parking lot. It won't be easy, Diana admitted, but it's an important skill to develop. The greatest mathematical insight has no impact if it can't be communicated to others. Grace looked thoughtful. This might be good for Lily, socially too. She's always been. Separate from her peers. This could be a way to connect with them. The following Wednesday, Diana and Lily attended Dr. Tanaka's lecture at MIT. The presentation was technical and assumed graduate-level knowledge of topological mathematics. But Lily followed with remarkable concentration, occasionally making quick sketches in her notebook. Dr. Tanaka, a slight man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, presented his geometric visualization system with quiet enthusiasm. He explained how certain complex topological relationships could be better understood through structural mapping than through traditional algebraic representation. When the formal lecture concluded and the audience moved to a reception area for refreshments, Diana approached Dr. Tanaka with Lily beside her. Dr. Tanaka, thank you for an illuminating presentation. I'm Professor Diana Weissman from Harvard, and this is my colleague Lily Nakamura. Tanaka shook both their hands, raising an eyebrow slightly at Lily's obvious youth, but making no comment on it. A pleasure to meet you both. Are you working in topological visualization as well? In a manner of speaking, Diana replied. Lily has developed a visual approach to the Karishma Paradox that shares some conceptual similarities with your structural mapping. Tanaka's interest visibly sharpened. The Karishma Paradox? Most interesting. And what have you discovered? Diana gestured to Lily, who hesitantly opened her notebook to a recent diagram. I see it as a landscape with hidden tunnels, she explained, pointing to specific features. Everyone tries to go through the center, but there are paths around it if you change how you look at the dimensional relationships. Dr. Tanaka studied the diagram with remarkable intensity, asking Lily several pointed questions about specific features and their mathematical significance. To Diana's pride, Lily answered with growing confidence, explaining her intuitive understanding in her own terminology. After several minutes, Tanaka looked up at Diana. This is remarkable work, completely untrained. Entirely self-developed, Diana confirmed. Lily's visual framework emerged naturally from her way of perceiving mathematical relationships. And you are helping to formalize it? When Diana nodded, Tanaka continued. I would very much like to see your progress. The approach is unconventional, but contains genuine insight. That spiral structure in particular suggests a transformation I had not considered. They spent another hour in conversation, with Dr. Tanaka offering suggestions for translating Lily's visual intuitions into more formal mathematical language. By the time they left, Diana felt a renewed confidence in their work. Tanaka's interest and approval represented the first validation from an established mathematician outside Harvard. He understood, Lily said wonderingly as they walked to the parking lot. He didn't think my drawings were just silly pictures. Dr. Tanaka has spent decades developing his own visualization system, Diana explained. He recognizes the value of alternative approaches to mathematical understanding. Do you think other mathematicians will understand too? At the conference, Diana hesitated. Some will, others may be more skeptical. But if we can develop a rigorous, formal expression of your insights, the results will speak for themselves. Over the next 2 weeks, their work accelerated, with input from Dr. Tanaka, who had generously shared several unpublished papers on his visualization methodology. They made significant progress in formalizing Lily's approach. The tunnels in her visual landscape were gradually being translated into precise mathematical transformations that preserved the essential invariance while bypassing the central obstruction of the paradox. Lily's weekly presentations to her algebra class had also begun with mixed results. Some students were intrigued by her visual approach, particularly those who struggled with traditional algebraic manipulation. Others were confused or dismissive. Mrs. Coleman remained skeptical, but acknowledged that Lily's explanations had helped several students grasp concepts they had previously found difficult. Then came the notification from the Weinstadt conference. Their abstract had been accepted for presentation. This was a significant validation. The conference had a notoriously selective acceptance rate. But it also meant they had less than 2 months to complete their formal paper and prepare the presentation. Diana shared the news with Jamil Acharya, who had become an unofficial ally within the department. "That's impressive," he admitted. "The Weinstadt committee doesn't make exceptions for unusual circumstances. They must have seen genuine merit in your approach." "The question is whether Bennett and the tenure committee will see it the same way," Diana said. "Acceptance at Weinstadt is significant, but Bennett seems determined to view this entire project as academically irresponsible." Jamil's expression grew serious. "There's been a development you should know about. Bennett has suggested creating a new policy requiring departmental approval for research collaborations with individuals lacking appropriate academic credentials." Diana felt a chill. "That's clearly aimed at my work with Lily." "Clearly, and while it wouldn't affect your current project retroactively, it sends a message about how such collaborations are viewed." "Has there been a vote?" "Not yet. It's scheduled for next month's faculty meeting." Jamil hesitated. "Diana, I've been thinking. What if you invited Bennett to one of your work sessions with Lily? Let him see firsthand what you're doing." The suggestion was unexpected but not unreasonable. "Do you think he'd come?" "If framed as professional courtesy, he might feel obligated. Bennett values academic protocol highly." Diana considered the idea. Bennett had dismissed Lily's approach based on principle, not evidence. Perhaps seeing her in action would at least complicate his opposition. "I'll think about it." That Friday afternoon, Diana and Lily were working in her office when a knock interrupted them. Diana opened the door to find Bennett standing there, his tall frame rigid with disapproval. "Professor Bennett," she said, struggling to hide her surprise. "What can I do for you?" "I received your invitation to observe your work with Miss Nakamura," he said stiffly. "I had planned to decline, but Dr. Acharya was quite insistent that I should see this approach firsthand before finalizing my position." Diana silently thanked Jamil for his initiative. "Please come in. We're working on formalizing a key aspect of our approach to the Karishma Paradox." Bennett entered, nodding curtly to Lily, who had gone very still at her seat. The tension in the room was palpable. "We're currently translating Lily's visual understanding of a topological transformation into standard mathematical notation," Diana explained, gesturing to the whiteboard covered with a mixture of diagrams and equations. "Lily, could you explain what we're working on?" The girl hesitated, clearly intimidated by Bennett's presence, but then took a deep breath and stood. We're mapping what happens when you approach the central singularity of the paradox from an alternative dimensional perspective. She pointed to a spiral-like structure in her diagram. Traditional approaches try to resolve the contradictory conditions directly, but we're showing that they can be reconciled if viewed as projections of a higher dimensional structure. Bennett studied the board without comment, his expression unreadable. The key insight, Diana continued, is that the apparently contradictory boundary conditions of the Karishma Paradox are only contradictory when approached through conventional transformational sequences. Lily's visual framework revealed alternative pathways, what she calls tunnels, that preserve the essential invariance while avoiding the central obstruction. "And you've formalized these tunnels mathematically?" Bennett asked, his skepticism evident in his tone. "We're in the process of doing so," Diana acknowledged. "Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka of Kyoto University has been consulting with us on the formalization. His work on structural mapping provides a methodological precedent." Bennett's eyebrows rose slightly at the mention of Tanaka, a respected figure even among traditional mathematicians. Tanaka is involved in this. He's provided guidance based on his own visualization system. He finds Lily's approach quite promising. Bennett turned to Lily. "Young lady, may I ask how you developed this visual framework? What mathematical training informed it?" Lily glanced at Diana, who nodded encouragingly. "I didn't have training, sir. I've just always seen math this way, as shapes and landscapes instead of equations. When I read about the Karishma Paradox in a magazine, I could see why everyone was getting stuck. They were trying to climb directly over the mountain instead of looking for tunnels through it." "A colorful metaphor," Bennett said dryly, "but mathematics requires precision, not metaphors. The metaphors are just how I explain it," Lily replied with more confidence than Diana had expected. "The diagrams themselves are precise. Each curve and intersection represents specific mathematical relationships." Bennett studied the girl with new attention. "Show me." For the next 20 minutes, Lily walked Bennett through her visualization of the Karishma Paradox, explaining how the landscape represented different mathematical domains and how the transformations she had identified preserved the critical invariants. Diana occasionally interjected to connect Lily's explanations to more formal mathematical concepts, but mostly let the girl speak in her own terms. Bennett asked several pointed questions, challenging Lily's understanding of specific aspects of the paradox. To Diana's pride, Lily answered thoughtfully, acknowledging when she reached the limits of her knowledge, but demonstrating a surprisingly sophisticated grasp of the underlying mathematical principles. Finally, Bennett stepped back from the whiteboard. "Your approach is unconventional," he said, addressing Lily directly, "and significantly underdeveloped in formal terms. But—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "There appears to be a coherent internal logic to your visualization system. It wasn't approval exactly, but it was far from the outright dismissal he had initially offered." Diana felt a spark of hope. "Thank you for the demonstration," Bennett continued, turning to Diana. "I maintain my concerns about the methodological unorthodoxy of this collaboration, but I acknowledge there may be more substance here than I initially assumed." After he left, Lily collapsed into her chair. "Does that mean he doesn't think I'm just making things up anymore?" "I think it means he's reserving judgment," Diana said, "which, from Professor Bennett, is actually significant progress." The following week, Bennett approached Diana after a faculty meeting. "I've been reviewing some of Tanaka's papers on structural mapping," he said without preamble. "His formalization of visual intuition is more rigorous than I had appreciated." Diana nodded, waiting for him to continue. "While I still have reservations about your collaboration with Miss Nakamura, I've decided to withhold further objections pending the outcome of your Weinstadt presentation." If you can demonstrate genuine mathematical advancement rather than merely an interesting visualization technique, I will reconsider my position." It wasn't support, but it was a retreat from active opposition, and more than Diana had hoped for. "Thank you, Professor Bennett. We're working diligently to ensure our presentation meets the highest standards of mathematical rigor." As Bennett walked away, Diana felt a complex mixture of relief and anxiety. The pressure to deliver a substantive breakthrough at Weinstadt had just increased dramatically. Bennett was giving them a chance to prove the value of their approach, but if they failed to do so convincingly, the consequences for both her career and Lily's future opportunities could be severe. That evening, Diana called Grace Nakamura to update her on these developments and to discuss the intensive work schedule they would need to maintain to prepare for the conference. "Lily's already working every spare minute," Grace said, concern evident in her voice. "Her other subjects are starting to suffer, and she's exhausted when she gets home." "I understand," Diana said, "but we have a crucial opportunity here." Bennett's willingness to reconsider his opposition could make all the difference for Lily's future in mathematics. "And for your tenure," Grace added perceptively. Diana couldn't deny it. "Yes, but more importantly, I genuinely believe our work has the potential to advance understanding of the Karishma Paradox. That matters beyond any personal or professional considerations." After a pause, Grace sighed. "I'll talk with Lily's teachers about reducing her regular homework load temporarily, but promise me you'll make sure she gets enough rest. She's still a child, even if her mind sometimes operates on a different level." "I promise," Diana said, "and thank you." The following day, Lily arrived at their session looking both excited and nervous. "Mrs. Coleman wants to attend the Weinstadt conference," she announced. "She says seeing professional mathematicians engage with my approach might help her understand how to incorporate visual methods into her teaching." Diana was surprised but pleased. "That's a positive development. Her support at school would make things easier for you." "She's still making me do algebra the regular way on tests," Lily grumbled, "but she's been letting me explain things to the class using my diagrams once a week. Some kids actually get it. Jason, who was failing before, said my mountain and tunnel explanation of factoring made way more sense than the standard method." "That's wonderful, Lily. Being able to translate between different ways of understanding mathematics is a valuable skill for teaching and for research." As they settled into their work, Diana reflected on how much had changed in the past weeks. What had begun as an unlikely encounter with a precocious child had evolved into a genuine mathematical partnership that was now attracting attention from figures as diverse as Dr. Tanaka, Professor Bennett, and Mrs. Coleman. Each brought different perspectives and expectations, but all had recognized, however reluctantly, that there was something of value in Lily's unusual approach. The Weinstadt conference was now less than 7 weeks away. They had made significant progress in formalizing Lily's insights, but the hardest work remained, developing a complete, rigorous proof that her tunnels through the mathematical landscape of the Karishma Paradox represented valid transformations that preserved the essential invariance while resolving the central contradiction. Diana studied Lily, who was absorbed in refining a particularly complex diagram. The girl's capacity for sustained concentration and creative problem-solving continued to astonish her. Whatever happened at Weinstadt, Diana was increasingly convinced that Lily Nakamura represented a truly exceptional mathematical mind, one that perceived patterns and relationships in ways that conventional training might actually have hindered rather than helped. The real challenge wasn't proving that Lily's approach had value, it was translating that value into terms the mathematical establishment could recognize and accept. As Dr. Tanaka had advised in a recent email, the goal is not to force her vision into traditional forms, but to expand the boundaries of what mathematics recognizes as valid expression. With renewed determination, Diana turned to the whiteboard. Let's focus on formalizing the transitivity relationships in your central tunnel structure. I think that's the key to demonstrating the validity of the transformation sequence. Lily nodded, already reaching for her colored markers. I've been thinking about that. What if we show the tunnel as a projection from a higher dimensional mapping? Like this? She began sketching rapidly, building a multi-layered structure that seemed to fold in on itself while maintaining key relational properties. As Diana watched the diagram take shape, she felt that familiar surge of excitement. They were venturing into genuinely new mathematical territory, not just solving an existing problem, but developing a new way of seeing mathematical relationships. Whatever the tenure committee decided, whatever Bennett ultimately concluded, about their unorthodox collaboration, this work had already changed Diana's understanding of what mathematics could be. And for Lily, it had transformed her isolation into connection, her difference into distinction. That alone made the journey worthwhile, regardless of what awaited them at Weinstadt. Late that night, after Lily had gone home, Diana received an unexpected email from Dr. Tanaka. Professor Weissman, after further consideration of your work with Miss Nakamura, I have decided to attend the Weinstadt conference personally. Her visualization approach represents a significant development in structural mapping theory, potentially bridging intuitive geometric understanding and formal topological analysis in ways my own work has only begun to explore. If agreeable to you both, I would like to participate in your final preparation sessions before the conference. My experience in presenting unconventional methodologies to traditional audiences may prove useful. Regards, Hiroshi Tanaka. Diana stared at the screen, momentarily stunned. Tanaka rarely attended Western conferences, preferring to work quietly from his position at Kyoto University. His willingness to travel to Weinstadt specifically to support their presentation represented an extraordinary vote of confidence. She immediately forwarded the email to Grace, adding, "This is significant validation from one of the few established mathematicians who has developed his own visualization system. Dr. Tanaka's support at Weinstadt will substantially increase the credibility of our presentation. We should discuss how to incorporate his participation into our preparation schedule." As she prepared for bed, Diana found herself thinking about the remarkable chain of events that had brought them to this point. If Lily hadn't taken the initiative to bring her notebook to Harvard that night, if Diana hadn't returned to the parking lot to look at it again, if Bennett had succeeded in dismissing the work before it had a chance to develop, how many such moments of potential connection were lost because unconventional thinking wasn't given the opportunity to demonstrate its value. Diana made a silent promise to herself. Whether or not they resolved the Karishma Paradox, whether or not her tenure bid succeeded, she would find ways to create more such opportunities, spaces where unusual minds could flourish, where different ways of seeing the mathematical world could be recognized and developed. With that thought, she drifted into sleep, her dreams filled with tunnels through impossible landscapes, spiraling pathways connecting distant realms of understanding. The Weinstadt conference loomed just 3 weeks away. Diana's office had transformed into a command center, walls covered with whiteboards, displaying a mixture of Lily's visual diagrams and the increasingly formal mathematical notation they were developing to express them. Papers and reference books cluttered every surface, and a dedicated laptop connected them to Dr. Tanaka via video conference 3 times a week. The transitivity property must be preserved through the entire transformation sequence, Tanaka was saying, his voice crisp despite the digital distortion. On the screen, he held up a hand-drawn diagram that echoed Lily's visualization, but with additional notations around the edges. Otherwise, the tunnel collapses under the strain of the contradictory boundary conditions. Lily nodded, adding a new element to her own diagram. Like this, the spiral has to maintain its orthogonality to the primary dimension throughout the passage. Diana watched with quiet pride as mentor and prodigy collaborated across geography and generations. Tanaka had proven to be an ideal third partner, his decades of experience with visualization systems complementing Lily's raw intuition and Diana's formal mathematical expertise. Precisely, Tanaka confirmed. Now, regarding your presentation strategy, the Weinstadt audience will be predominantly traditionalists. You must begin with something they recognize, the conventional formulation of the Karishma Paradox, before introducing your alternative visualization. We've been working on exactly that, Diana said, turning one of the whiteboards to face the camera. A step-by-step translation between traditional notation and Lily's visual framework, showing the direct correspondences. Tanaka peered at the board through his wire-rimmed glasses. Good. But you must also prepare for skepticism. There will be those who dismiss this approach, regardless of its mathematical validity, simply because it emerges from an unconventional source. You mean because I'm a kid, Lily said matter-of-factly. Yes, and because you developed your system intuitively rather than through formal training. Tanaka's expression softened. This is not unique to your situation, Lily. Throughout history, mathematical innovations from outsiders have faced similar resistance. The Academy can be slow to recognize value in unfamiliar forms. After the video conference ended, Diana noticed Lily seemed preoccupied as she packed up her notebooks. Is everything all right? The girl hesitated. Dr. Tanaka said people might not believe me because I'm a kid. But what if they're right? What if I'm wrong about the whole thing? Diana put a hand on Lily's shoulder. That's not what he meant. Your approach has mathematical validity. We've confirmed that through our formalization work. Dr. Tanaka was just warning that some people might dismiss it without proper consideration because of biases about who can contribute to mathematics. Boo, but what if we get to the conference and I can't explain it properly? What if I freeze up or say something stupid? The vulnerability in Lily's voice reminded Diana forcefully that for all her mathematical brilliance, she was still a 12-year-old, facing enormous pressure. We'll practice your presentation extensively before the conference. And remember, I'll be there with you, and so will Dr. Tanaka. We're a team. Lily nodded, but still looked troubled. Mom says I should remember that even if it doesn't go perfectly, what we've discovered is still true. But it feels like everything depends on this, your tenure, and whether people will ever take me seriously. Your mother is wise, Diana said. The validity of our work exists independently of how it's received, but I understand the pressure you're feeling. I feel it too. How about we take a break from the formalization tomorrow and focus on practicing the presentation? We'll invite some friendly faces to give us feedback. The next day, Diana arranged an informal rehearsal with Jamil Acharya and 2 graduate students who had expressed interest in their work. Lily was nervous at first, stumbling over her explanation of the visualization system, but gradually found her rhythm as she moved from theory to demonstration, showing how her approach revealed alternative pathways through the mathematical landscape. Of the Karishma Paradox, Jamil's feedback was thoughtful. Your visual explanation is actually quite compelling, Lily. I found myself understanding aspects of the paradox in new ways. But you might consider beginning with a simpler example before tackling the Karishma directly. something that demonstrates your visualization technique on more familiar mathematical ground. That's excellent advice, Diana agreed. Perhaps we could use a basic topological problem as an entry point, showing how your visual approach reveals insights that aren't immediately apparent in conventional notation. They spent the afternoon developing this new section of the presentation. By the time Grace arrived to pick up Lily, they had a clear outline for a 20-minute talk that built systematically from accessible examples to their novel approach to the Karishma Paradox. "How did it go?" Grace asked, noticing her daughter's animated expression. "We practiced the presentation, and Dr. Acharya gave us some really good ideas," Lily explained. "I'm still nervous, but it feels more organized now." "She did wonderfully," Diana assured Grace. Her ability to explain complex concepts through visual metaphors is remarkable. As they were leaving, Diana received an unexpected message from Bennett, requesting a meeting the following morning. She spent a restless night, wondering what new objection or obstacle he might raise so close to the conference. When she arrived at his office, she found not just Bennett, but also Professor Elaine Winters, the Department Chair of Applied Mathematics and a member of the Tenure Committee. "Professor Weissman, thank you for coming," Bennett began formally. "Professor Winters has expressed interest in your work with Miss Nakamura, particularly in light of Dr. Tanaka's involvement." Diana nodded cautiously to Professor Winters, who was known for her rigorous standards, but also for her intellectual open-mindedness. "I'm happy to discuss our research. I've reviewed the materials you submitted to the Weinstadt conference," Winters said, getting directly to the point. "The formalization of the visual approach is more developed than I expected, given the unusual circumstances of your collaboration. Dr. Tanaka's endorsement also carries significant weight." "Thank you," Diana said, still uncertain where this was heading. "The Tenure Committee has been discussing your case," Winters continued. "Professor Bennett has raised concerns about methodological unorthodoxy, while others have pointed to the potential significance of a breakthrough on the Karishma Paradox." Bennett cleared his throat. "We've reached a compromise position. The committee will reserve judgment until after the Weinstadt conference. If your presentation demonstrates genuine mathematical advancement, as validated by peer assessment, it will be considered a significant positive factor in your tenure evaluation." Diana processed this carefully. "And if the reception is mixed or negative, then the concerns about methodological judgment would likely predominate," Winters said frankly. "But I want to be clear, we're evaluating the mathematical merit of your work, not its popularity. If you present a rigorous, well-formalized approach that offers genuine insight into the Karishma Paradox, that has value regardless of whether the entire audience embraces it immediately." It was a fair position. More fair than Diana had feared. "I understand. Thank you for the clarification." As she left the meeting, Diana felt the weight of responsibility more acutely than ever. Her professional future now hinged directly on their Weinstadt presentation. More importantly, so did Lily's mathematical future. A positive reception would open doors for the girl that might otherwise remain closed due to her age and unconventional approach. The stakes had never been higher. Over the next week, they refined their presentation with almost obsessive attention to detail. Lily practiced her sections repeatedly, gaining confidence with each run-through. Diana worked on the formal mathematical components, ensuring that every transformation and equivalence was rigorously established. Dr. Tanaka provided remote critique and suggestions, helping them anticipate potential objections and questions. 5 days before the conference, Diana received a surprising email from Mrs. Coleman. "Professor Weissman, I wanted to update you on Lily's progress in my class. Her weekly presentations on visual mathematics have had a remarkable effect on several students who previously struggled with algebraic concepts. In particular, Her landscape metaphor for solving equations has helped 3 failing students achieve passing grades on the most recent assessment. While I remain committed to teaching standard mathematical techniques, I've come to appreciate that different minds may require different entry points to mathematical understanding. Lily's approach offers one such alternative pathway. I look forward to attending the Weinstadt conference to learn more about how these visualization techniques might be adapted for classroom use. Regards, Catherine Coleman. Diana forwarded the email to Grace with a note. It seems Lily is already having an impact on mathematics education even before Weinstadt. The day before they were scheduled to leave for the conference, Diana arranged a final rehearsal in the department's small auditorium. To her surprise, not only did Jamil attend, but also Professor Winters and several graduate students and faculty members who had heard about their work. Even more surprisingly, Bennett himself appeared, taking a seat in the back row with his usual impassive expression. Lily noticed the expanded audience and whispered nervously to Diana, "There are so many people. Just more practice for the real thing," Diana reassured her. "Remember, you understand this material better than anyone. Just explain it the way you see it." Lily took a deep breath and began. She opened with a simple example, visualizing a standard calculus problem as a landscape with peaks, valleys, and paths, then gradually built to more complex scenarios, demonstrating how her approach revealed relationships that weren't immediately apparent in conventional notation. By the time she reached the Karishma Paradox itself, showing how her visualization exposed alternative pathways around the central obstruction, the audience was completely engaged. Even Bennett was leaning forward slightly, his usual detachment replaced by reluctant interest. Diana then took over to present the formal mathematical components, showing how they had translated Lily's visual insights into rigorous notation that preserved the essential invariants while resolving the paradox's contradictory conditions. She acknowledged Dr. Tanaka's contributions to the formalization methodology, noting that he would join them at the conference itself. When they finished, there was a moment of silence, then a scatter of applause that quickly grew stronger. Jamil was the first to raise his hand with a question. "Your transformation sequence around what Lily calls the central obstruction, does it generalize to other paradoxes with similar topological characteristics?" Diana glanced at Lily, who nodded eagerly. "We believe it might," Diana answered. "We've begun exploring applications to the Richter-Joule problem, which shares some structural similarities with the Karishma." Several other questions followed, probing the details of their approach and its formalization. Most were genuinely interested rather than skeptical, and Lily handled her share with growing confidence, occasionally deferring to Diana on matters of formal proof, but speaking with authority about the visual framework itself. When the session ended, Winters approached them first. "That was impressive. You've clearly made remarkable progress in formalizing the visualization approach. I particularly appreciated the explicit connection to Tanaka's structural mapping theory. It provides valuable historical context." "Thank you, Professor Winters," Diana said. "We've worked hard to ensure the rigor of our formalization." Bennett was the last to approach. He stood before them for a moment, his expression unreadable, then addressed Lily directly. "Young lady, you've developed a most unorthodox approach to the Karishma Paradox, but I must acknowledge there appears to be genuine mathematical insight. In your visualization method, I will be interested to see how it is received at Weinstadt." Coming from Bennett, this was high praise indeed. Lily managed a small smile. "Thank you, sir." "Idai." After everyone had left, Diana and Lily remained in the auditorium, making final adjustments to their presentation based on the feedback they'd received. "That went well, didn't it?" Lily asked, sounding more confident than she had in weeks. It went extremely well, Diana confirmed. Even Professor Bennett is coming around. Do you think the people at Weinstadt will be as interested? Some will be, others may be more skeptical. But what matters is that we've developed something mathematically valid and potentially significant. The rest is just academic politics. Lily nodded thoughtfully. Mom says I should remember that changing how people think takes time. That even if some people don't get it right away, we're still putting the ideas out there. Your mother is very wise, Diana said, not for the first time. Now, let's go through your opening section once more, and then you should get some rest. Tomorrow is a big day. The Weinstadt Conference on Non-Linear Systems was held at the prestigious Marshall Center, a modernist glass and steel structure on Princeton University's campus. As Diana and Lily approached the registration desk, they were met by Dr. Tanaka, who had arrived the previous evening. Professor Weissman, Miss Nakamura, good morning. I've reviewed your final presentation slides. They flow very well from the visual intuition to the formal mathematics. I believe we are well prepared. Diana introduced Lily to Dr. Tanaka in person for the first time. Despite having collaborated remotely for weeks, there was a moment of shy awkwardness as the 12-year-old met the venerable mathematician face to face. It is an honor to meet you properly, Lily, Tanaka said with a formal bow. Your visualization approach has already contributed to my own thinking about structural mapping. Really? Lily's eyes widened. But you've been doing this for decades. And yet there is always more to discover, Tanaka replied. That is the beauty of mathematics. It rewards fresh perspectives. As they collected their conference badges and programs, Diana noticed several attendees glancing curiously at Lily. Her youth was conspicuous in this gathering of professors, researchers, and graduate students. Some looks were merely curious, others more skeptical or dismissive. Our presentation is scheduled for 2 o'clock in Hall C, Diana noted, checking the program. That gives us time to attend the morning sessions and get a feel for the audience. They spent the morning listening to presentations on various aspects of non-linear systems theory. Some were highly technical, focusing on specific mathematical problems, while others addressed broader theoretical frameworks. The quality was uniformly high. Weinstadt attracted the best researchers in the field. At lunch, they were joined by Professor Sarah Kaplan from UC Berkeley, a specialist in topological dynamics who had expressed interest in their abstract. So you're the young mathematician everyone's talking about, Kaplan said to Lily with a friendly smile. Your abstract has generated quite a buzz. Not everyone believes a 12-year-old could contribute meaningfully to the Karishma Paradox. Lily looked uncomfortable. I didn't know it was supposed to be so hard when I started. I just saw it differently. Sometimes that's exactly what's needed, Kaplan replied. Fresh eyes, unconstrained by established approaches. I'm looking forward to your presentation. As 2 o'clock approached, Diana, Lily, and Dr. Tanaka made their way to Hall C. To Diana's surprise, the room was nearly full. Word had spread about the unusual collaboration between a Harvard professor and a middle school student supervised by a respected Japanese mathematician. There are so many people, Lily whispered, suddenly pale. Focus on the mathematics, Tanaka advised quietly. The audience is secondary to the work itself. The session chair, a distinguished professor from Oxford, introduced them with a neutral tone that neither endorsed nor dismissed their unconventional collaboration. As they took their positions at the podium, Diana gave Lily an encouraging nod. The girl began exactly as they had practiced, opening with a simple example that demonstrated her visualization approach before gradually building to more complex applications. Her initial nervousness faded as she lost herself in the mathematics, explaining her landscape metaphor with growing confidence. Diana watched the audience reaction as Lily spoke. Some faces showed skepticism, others genuine interest. A few were taking detailed notes. No one appeared dismissive or contemptuous, a positive sign. When Lily reached the central portion of their presentation, her visualization of the Karishma Paradox as a landscape with tunnels bypassing the central obstruction, the room grew, noticeably more attentive. She explained her intuitive understanding of why conventional approaches failed, using her diagrams to show how the paradox's contradictory conditions created what appeared to be an impassable obstacle when approached directly. But if we change our perspective, Lily continued, displaying a complex spiral diagram, we can see alternative pathways that preserve the essential invariance while avoiding the contradiction. It's like finding tunnels through a mountain instead of trying to climb over it. Diana then took over to present the formal mathematical components, showing how they had translated Lily's visual insights into rigorous notation. She acknowledged Dr. Tanaka's contribution to the formalization methodology, noting the connections to his established work on structural mapping. Finally, Dr. Tanaka himself spoke briefly, placing their work in the broader context of visualization approaches to complex mathematical problems. His presence and endorsement lent credibility that would have been difficult to establish otherwise. When they concluded, there was a moment of silence, then a robust round of applause. The session chair opened the floor for questions. The first came from a professor Diana recognized from MIT. Your transformation sequence appears to resolve the central contradiction of the Karishma Paradox. But have you verified that it preserves all the necessary invariants throughout the process? Diana nodded to Lily, who stepped forward to answer. Yes, we've verified invariant preservation at each stage of the transformation. In our visual framework, this appears as consistent altitude throughout the tunnel passage, which we've formalized mathematically in section 4 of our paper. The questions continued for 20 minutes, ranging from technical details about specific transformations to broader inquiries about the visualization methodology itself. Some were genuinely interested, others clearly testing the depth of their understanding. Lily handled her share with remarkable poise, occasionally deferring to Diana or Dr. Tanaka on matters of formal proof, but speaking with authority about the visual framework itself. The final question came from an older mathematician with a distinct German accent. This is for the young lady. Your visualization approach is intriguing, but do you believe it has applications beyond the Karishma Paradox? Is this a general methodology or a specific insight? Lily considered the question carefully. I think it's both. The specific tunnel we found is unique to the Karishma Paradox, but the way of seeing mathematical relationships as landscapes with features you can navigate, I believe that could apply to many problems. I've used similar visualization techniques for everything, from basic algebra to calculus problems. Interesting, the mathematician said. I look forward to reading your full paper. As the session ended and attendees began filing out, Diana felt a cautious optimism. The presentation had gone well, better than she had dared hope. The questions had been serious rather than dismissive, focused on the mathematics rather than Lily's age or lack of formal training. Several attendees approached them afterward, asking for clarification on specific points or expressing interest in potential applications of the visualization approach. Dr. Tanaka fielded some of these inquiries, providing additional context from his own research experience. You did brilliantly, Diana told Lily when they finally had a moment alone. Those were challenging questions, and you handled them with real expertise. The girl looked simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. Do you think they believed us? About the tunnels through the paradox? I think we've given them something they can't simply dismiss, Diana said carefully. Whether they fully accept our approach immediately is less important than the fact that they engaged with it seriously. Ideas this unconventional often take time to be fully appreciated. Dr. Tanaka joined them, his expression thoughtful. The reception was quite positive for such a radical departure from conventional approaches. I would consider this a significant success. And as they gathered their materials, Diana noticed Professor Bennett standing at the back of the now nearly empty hall. He had not asked any questions during the session, but his presence itself was notable. She excused herself from Lily and Dr. Tanaka and approached him. "Professor Bennett, I didn't realize you were attending Weinstadt this year. I decided it might be prudent to observe your presentation firsthand," he replied, "given its potential implications for departmental matters." "And what did you think?" Diana asked directly. Bennett considered his response carefully. "The formalization was more rigorous than I expected. Dr. Tanaka's involvement has clearly strengthened the mathematical foundations." He paused. "Miss Nakamura's visualization approach, while unorthodox, appears to offer genuine insight into why conventional attacks on the Karishma Paradox have failed." Coming from Bennett, this was remarkable praise. "Does this change your position regarding our collaboration?" "I maintain that such unconventional methodologies should be approached with caution," he said. "However, in this specific instance, the results appear to justify the approach." Another pause. "I will convey this assessment to the tenure committee." It wasn't an enthusiastic endorsement, but it represented a significant shift from his earlier opposition. Diana felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Thank you for your consideration, Professor Bennett." When she returned to Lily and Dr. Tanaka, she found them deep in conversation with Professor Sarah Kaplan and two other mathematicians she didn't recognize. "Professor Weissman," Kaplan said, "we were just discussing the educational implications of Lily's visualization approach. Dr. Ramirez here specializes in mathematics, education, and is fascinated by the potential for helping students who struggle with traditional symbolic representations." The conversation continued, branching into various applications and extensions of their work. By the time they finally left the hall, it was clear that their presentation had resonated with a significant portion of the audience. Not universal acceptance, certainly, but serious engagement with the mathematical content rather than dismissal, based on its unconventional source. That evening, Diana, Lily, and Dr. Tanaka joined several conference attendees for dinner at a restaurant near the campus. Mrs. Coleman was there as well, having attended their presentation with evident pride. In her former skeptic's eyes, "I've been thinking about how to adapt Lily's visualization techniques for my pre-algebra students," she told Diana. "Her weekly presentations have already shown promising results with visual learners who struggle with symbolic manipulation." "That's wonderful," Diana replied. "Educational applications weren't our initial focus, but they could be just as significant as the theoretical breakthrough." Across the table, Lily was engaged in animated conversation with a graduate student from Stanford about potential applications of her visualization approach to other topological problems. Despite the long, intense day, her enthusiasm remained undimmed when discussing the mathematics she loved. Diana felt a deep satisfaction watching this scene unfold. Whatever the final impact of their work on the Karishma Paradox, they had already achieved something remarkable, creating a space where a 12-year-old girl's unconventional mathematical vision could be taken seriously by established academics, where mutual respect transcended differences in age, training, and approach. As the dinner wound down, Dr. Tanaka raised his glass in a toast to new pathways through old problems, and to the fresh perspectives that reveal them. The sentiment was echoed around the table, even by those who had initially been most skeptical of their approach. It wasn't universal acceptance, but it was something perhaps more valuable, genuine intellectual engagement across boundaries of age, background, and methodology. Later that night, as Diana was preparing for bed in her hotel room, she received a text message from Grace Nakamura. "Lily just called me, almost too excited to speak coherently. Thank you for believing in her when others wouldn't. Whatever happens next, you've given her something precious. The knowledge that her mind has value exactly as it is." Diana felt tears prick her eyes as she replied, "The privilege has been mine." Lily's vision has changed my understanding of mathematics and the many ways minds can perceive it. We've created something meaningful together, a true collaboration across boundaries that shouldn't have existed in the first place. The next morning, Diana woke to find an email notification that their paper had been downloaded over 200 times since being made available on the conference repository the previous evening, an unusually high number for a specialized mathematical work. The commentary section already contained several substantive responses, most engaging seriously with their methodology and findings. Whatever the long-term impact of their work, it was clear that Lily Nakamura's mathematical vision would not be dismissed as worthless again. Harvard, or at least a significant portion of its mathematical community, had been proven wrong, and a 12-year-old girl with an unconventional mind had helped show them a new way of seeing. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.